Yo, welcome to the channel. It's your boy Skater V. On today's video, we're doing a review on the new Star Wars series on Disney Plus called Andor. Now, this is a prequel to the film Rogue One, where we'll follow the origins of our hero Cassian Andor and his ties to the Rebel Alliance. And while it's not necessary to watch that film to enjoy this series, I still will be talking about key moments in both storylines. So spoiler warnings ahead, and I hope you enjoy the review. Now, I think we can all admit that Star Wars is kind of in a weird place with the fandom. While everyone has their opinions with The Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker, there's just been no movies that have released since then. Now, that's not to say that Lucasfilm hasn't been producing anything, because the episodic series that they've been releasing on Disney Plus have honestly been some of the best content and storylines that we've gotten from Star Wars. And it looks like Disney sees the potential in these series because most of the Star Wars shows have ended up being the most expensive and time-consuming productions that have been produced for the app. And Andor's no different, as it tries to follow the same cinematic language as its film counterpart while trying to stick to this new episodic film format. Now, this is no jab at Marvel, but we've yet to see a show of theirs with the budget this large or with a series with this many episodes, as there's 12 in this season. Now with that, let's break down the show. So we start off with a bunch of awesome slow shots of Andor in the rain as he's going down this neon city, and he bumps in and finds some information of his lost sister that we end up finding out that he even had. Now across the room, there's these two officers that find Andor a little sus, and they end up following him as he leaves. But they end up capturing him in a back alley, and Andor gets scared and accidentally misfires one of the officers and then ends up taking down the other one. Shocked but knowing of the consequences that might follow, Andor ends up fleeing back to his home planet, where he tries to find some friends that can help him out in this situation. He meets with his friend Bix, who puts him in this gig to be the middleman of this deal that he's going to meet with a trader from Coruscant. For the next 2 episodes, we see flashbacks of Andor's origins as a child in this primitive planet of a society ran by children, apparently. And this officer that is taking the case of Andor extremely personal is even going out of his way to grab a team to investigate and take him down himself. Now, the arc of the first 3 episodes is pretty solid, and while it doesn't end in a huge action set piece, there's plenty of explosions and quick cuts to keep you entertained throughout the chase. From there, every episode we're being introduced to a different character and storyline that ends up unfolding throughout the entire series, as there's many characters that end up taking huge chunks of the show later on in the season. Like in episode 2, we're introduced to Lutheran, who's the mastermind of the Rebel Alliance, and the mystery man that ends up meeting with Andor in episode 3. Or Mon Mothma, who doesn't make an appearance until episode 4, and she plays a huge role in trying to find the fundings for the Alliance. And we also meet a new Imperial officer named Deidre, who's trying to climb the social ladder of the Imperial Army. Between there, the first 2 arcs are very solid, and honestly, it does follow Andor's story very well while introducing different characters. It's just after that, the show does take a different interesting approach while trying to find its own organic structure as an episodic show. For example, the Star Wars animated shows have been following this 3-episode arc for many years, but when it comes to their live-action adaptations, many of those series have just followed a single character, maybe with 1 or 2 side plot points, so it's not really used to following a certain arc. It's usually a span of a character's development throughout a series. But Andor does follow that fine line in between both types of story writing. Like the first 3 episodes are just like Mando, as we're following Andor and his storyline, but then slowly through the next 3 to episode 6, it's kind of like the Clone Wars, that we're actually seeing different sides of the battlefields and different characters' points of view. Now, by episode 6 is when we finally get to see what the show is actually trying to do with mix-matching all the storylines and plot threads throughout the series. That leads to this grand heist where Andor and a bunch of locals try to take down a mining facility while stealing a bunch of goods to use for the Rebel Alliance and hurt the Empire's funding budget. Now, I will admit, by the end of episode 7, the show lost me. At this point, we already were following 5 different character plot lines, And we were just entering the third arc, which I kind of thought there might have been a fourth one, but we'll get to there. Now, I think episodes 7 through 11 was just one large arc. Now, in the beginning, we see that Andor finally has the funds to kind of place himself pretty well in the universe, but he still has to hide from the Empire. And that kind of puts him in a weird position because while hiding, he's ignoring the large fact that he needs to kind of join. And then the Empire kind of just throws him in by giving him this fake prison sentence where they really showcase some interesting viewpoints of authoritative power in the Star Wars universe. Now, I kind of felt that Andor kind of clumsily got himself into this position, but then again, it kind of makes sense just because, yeah, if the Empire is as strict and just as terrible as they are, they will kind of do this of just granting random people and just telling them, oh, no, you're in trouble, get over here. And because they're just random citizens that probably don't have any funds, like Andor, he didn't have any money to get himself out of the bail. He basically just got sentenced to that term and then was just thrown into that prison sentence. Now, the first 2 episodes of this arc, I wasn't too much of a fan because, again, we were just in the same location. So until we end up seeing other characters and their situations, we were just stuck in this big white factory facility room of them just working and everything. But at least it had a solid ending because the whole lead up to that arc was just a little bit too slow. And I kind of felt that it could have kind of solved itself within the second episode. But then we did really need to get a little bit more character build up from Andor to really feel like he needed to lead something. And then from there, encourage others to participate as well and believe in themselves. Now, I love Diego Luna's acting throughout this entire series, but if it wasn't for the guest appearance of Andy Serkis in this whole arc, I would have left. He was honestly the only reason why I was there, because not only his performance, but just I was wondering of, okay, why is this high caliber actor being here or even being placed in this situation, which I'm guessing he's going to have a bigger role at maybe the next season or a different arc. If you saw the end of this one, he kind of leaves his life ambiguous because he tells us that he can't swim, but we never really see what happens to him or the others from that prison cell. But I'm not judging anyone's acting. Everyone brought their A game to here. It was just that one arc. I wasn't really of a fan of it. And instead of having a surprise twist in the plot, just having a guest star like this really what drove it, so I was fine with it. By the middle of episode 11, we see all the side characters are looking for Andor, and they found that there's one event that he might end up showing up at. Now, during the prison break, Andor's mother ended up passing away in the side, and he doesn't know about it. So all the officers and Lutheran kind of expect that Andor, after escaping, might end up showing at the funeral. And while they are right, the final episode plays completely different from what they expected. As much as Andor wants to attend the funeral, he does know what can happen, so he actually tries to find all his friends and different members of the community to bring them together and try to get them out of the planet. Now, the entire place is swarmed with Imperial guards, and they're actually more surprised of the amount of attendance in the funeral. For Andor's mom was actually secretly like a beginning rebel leader that really led this planet to really become the independent thing that it was before the Empire ended up taking over. And during the funeral, they showcase a projection of one of her last messages, and that ends up inspiring all the citizens to revolt and fight against the Empire. Now, the whole action sequence in the ending it's all right. It's more of an inspiring piece than of a big action set one, but I did enjoy definitely though the cuts, the different character points and where they leave them off for an ending. I was satisfied with at least like both of the officers kind of being placed into one position because honestly, while they were both entertaining, I felt really lost in figuring out on which one was actually going to take Andor down or which one should we really care about. And Lutheran kind of switched in the end of episode 11, so at least we got to see that he was a man with some good values and wanted to actually keep Andor and try to teach him to be something bigger than what he was. And at least the last 3 episodes, Andor started to look a little bit more like his Rogue One counterpart as a leader and trying to actually be part of the cause. Because at the very beginning, I kind of saw that he was just like a little bit afraid and clumsily getting his way by the universe. And then all these things were just happening to fall upon his lap. But at least it did feel like it was organic. And rewatching the series, I do appreciate all the set pieces and arcs as they do flow together and do make sense. It's just on its first initial watch, I was just just a little bit lost, especially after the second arc. And if it wasn't for that ending cutscene with the Death Star, I didn't think that a secret cutscene was actually going to make me rewatch and appreciate an entire series, all right? That the little machine brick that we found in the very first arc was probably part of the Death Star. In the second arc and the heist, they're stealing materials and funds that are going to be used to build the Death Star. And then the whole prison break, Andor is physically building pieces that will build the Death Star, and then we find out even more story on how the Empire was actually trying to find more than just, machines to build their stuff. They were actually using real manpower, where in lore, we only kind of heard that they were using Wookiees and aliens to kind of fix some of the parts. But this was a really interesting show. Not just from the writing format and just how the show pieced itself together in this awesome spider web, but that it really does feed into the original trilogy and this new Star Wars that Disney has built the last couple of years. Because while Rogue One is just a 6-year-old film, it's not that old, it still hits to the point of where the Death Star is being built and made, which kind of does lead to A New Hope, which Rogue One did perfectly. And then this one does even better because while you don't need to watch that film, this one seems like a perfect series to just hop in, watch an entire character's arc, go through. And usually when a show ends, there's always hope of a larger extended episode or a movie to follow. Now, luckily, Rogue One is that film, so we don't have to worry about this whole arc having at least a satisfying conclusion. But it is great to see some progression in the Star Wars universe and for this character, because a lot of fans did grow to love and appreciate him. Spoiler warning, he takes the L at the very end of that story, so we kind of know that at some point Andor's story does end. And while I do hope that in the next season they do flesh him out a little bit more to match his Rogue One counterpart, which most likely that will happen, I do really appreciate all the additional lore and characters that they added with this series, because they made Mon Mothma super awesome. Like, I was really intrigued with all the side politics that were happening with her. Lutheran seemed super interesting and a character backstory that I want to know more about. And then just all the side characters like Mon Mothma's sister, the officer, they all added interesting personalities to the Star Wars universe that we just haven't seen. And we even got to meet a character that's possibly even more powerful and evil than Palpatine. Joking aside, they did a lot in this 12 episode season, so I really can't wait to see what they do in the next one. Because as of now, I believe the directors and writers have announced that there's only going to be a second season, with maybe that ending leading to the very beginning of Rogue One. So we'll see where this story, this season show goes on. I really liked it. I want everyone to tell me, down below, what were your thoughts? What were your comments? I know I went kind of play by play on how the show went and some of my feelings, but I really liked it. If I had to rate it, I'll give it probably a 8.5 out of 10. While I was a big fan of the first two arcs of the season, the second half kind of lost me. And honestly, if it wasn't for the secret cutscene at the very end with the Death Star, I just would have never went and rewatched the series to see if it actually made any sense or if any of the pieces went and fit together. And there's no disrespect to the acting, the writing, the production. Everything in this show is 10 out of 10, super awesome. I just felt that they should have maybe released these in 3-episode arcs so we can enjoy it like the premiere, because while the second half, like I said, was just a little bit laggy and there were 2 episodes of mainly filler, I just wasn't as on top of seeing the final episode premiere when it came out. I didn't see it until the weekend after because I kind of felt like, it's not necessary to wait until midnight to see this show, because I just wasn't too on top of it like in the premiere. But now that's starting to sound like a me problem. So please tell me down below, did you enjoy the show? What was your favorite part? And where would you rank Andor in some of your favorite Star Wars characters? This has been your boy Skater V. I appreciate you watching the video, and please check out the channel to see more. I post every Monday and Friday. Until then, I'll catch you to the next one. Peace!